This week in fantasy movies, that feel when filmmakers get their rights back. Plus, the streamer you'd least expect is finally doing a Blu-ray release. Can you guess who it is? Nope, it's not Netflix, but good guess. And we've got so many production updates from so many fantasy shows, including one directly from ya boy, George R.R. Martin. Legends have foretold what is to come this week in fantasy movies. Let's do some trailers. First up, we've got a trailer for Vishwambara. A Tamil fantasy epic where a prince travels to a bunch of different realms. The production team is pretty tight-lipped about any plot details, but that's okay because it's packed to the gills with stunning visuals. Coming May 9th. Then we've got Hellbound Season 2, where a cult leader returns from the dead. Coming October 25th. I lost count of how many people sent me Hulu's trailer for Goosebumps and no wait, it's just a title reveal? Come on people, I thought I taught you better. Don't give in to the manufactured hype, wait for actual hype-worthy stuff. Like Gentry Chow vs. the Underworld, about a high school girl with demon-fighting superpowers. Or Invincible Fight Girl, about a high school girl who wants to become a superpowered pro wrestler.
No one becomes a wrestler. You either are a wrestler or you aren't.
I'm gonna be the best wrestler of all time.
Coming to Toonami November 2nd. Heck, if you want something that's already proven, then we've got the final season of Star Trek Lower Decks.
There's no chaos, hijinks, or interpersonal conflicts.
Coming to Paramount Plus October 24th. But you deserve something charming and new, like Orb on the Movements of the Earth.
昨日は初めて6等星まで観測できて興奮しました。
そうか。ではそれをやめろ。
A fictionalized retelling of Copernicus' fight with the Catholic Church over the fact that the Earth orbits around the Sun, not the other way around.
じゃあ、今まさに空を動いているのは何なんです？
地球だ。
地動説。
See, this anime is fictionalized because the protagonist isn't actually Copernicus. It takes place in, I kid you not, P country, and he fights with, I kid you not, C religion. From G-Kids, we have Ghost Cat Anzu, which is like a modern take on Porco Rosso, about a 37-year-old deadbeat who's also a cat. Coming to theaters November 15th. Or you could watch a different kind of loser in Loner Life in Another World. Maybe you're not ready for another world? Well, Tasakari Hotel has you covered. About a hotel that exists between life and death, where souls stay to regain the memories they had in life. It looks like a solid character-driven mystery plot. Or we have
Vampire.
A yaoi anime about a young man who's drawn in by a vampire who's really bad at hiding the fact that he's a vampire. Finally, we have a short trailer for One Piece Fan Letter, a prequel movie following Nami before she joins the Straw Hats. Speaking of One Piece, by the way, Toei announced on Sunday morning that the One Piece anime will go on hiatus until April. First up in our news, George R.R. Martin has more updates from his trip to Northern Ireland over on his blog, not a blog, with several photos from HBO's production of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. The show is smaller, says Martin. 90% of the story is set in a field surrounded by tents, so they don't need nearly as big of a budget or scope or set as you see in Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. The title is still up in the air too. Right now it's called The Night of the Seven Kingdoms after the collection that holds all the Dunk and Egg novellas, but the novella this show is adapting is called The Hedge Knight, which is one of the titles in discussion. I just think it's great we're getting more stuff set in Westeros and that the well is nowhere near dry. Yes, even if The Winds of Winter isn't done yet. Speaking of which, side note, Martin has more Dunk and Egg stories to tell, but he's gonna hold off on them until he finishes The Winds of Winter. In other things that are long overdue, Kevin Smith regained the rights to Dogma. If you haven't seen it, Dogma is a 1999 religious comedy about two angels who were kicked out of heaven and banished to Wisconsin, but they discover a loophole in the Catholic Church's rules that could get them back in at the risk of destroying the world. It's also where we got the cool Jesus meme.
The church has appointed this year as a time of renewal, both of faith and of style. We've come up with a new, more inspiring sigil. I give you the Buddy Christ.
Of course, at its release, plenty of Christians had a totally normal one about the movie.
Organizers in Eatontown had hoped for hundreds to join them in the protest against the movie Dogma. Instead, they got less than 24, but they were joined by this man. He wouldn't admit it, but he looked and sounded suspiciously like Dogma's writer, director, co-star, and New Jersey resident, Kevin Smith.
I don't think it stands for anything positive.
What does it stand for?
I don't know, but I've been told not good.
You can see what the conversation was like in 1999. Anyway, ever since the film's inception, Dogma was owned by Harvey Weinstein, the guy who's now in jail for serial sexual harassment. Several years ago, Smith famously turned down an offer to make Dogma 2 because Harvey Weinstein still owned it. He also forwarded all his residuals for the movie over to Women in Film. But now, in an update on that hashtag show, Kevin Smith shared that Dogma is no longer under Weinstein's thumb.
The company that bought it, we met with them a couple months ago. They were like, would you be interested in re-releasing it and touring it and like you do with your movies? I was 100%. Are you kidding me? Touring a movie that I know people like and it's sentimental and nostalgic, like, we'll clean up.
That's right, Dogma is hitting the road. There isn't time to do a 25th anniversary thing right now. The anniversary is next month, but Smith and his team have big plans.
Back on home video and then back out in theaters, and I'll tour it and stuff like that. And maybe At this point, sequels, TV versions in terms of extending the story, something we could never do before.
Plus, he's already got his cast figured out.
And all those people who worked in it are still viable. You know what I'm saying? Like fucking Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, both still working. Salma Hayek, Chris Rock still slapping, pun intended.
Dogma should go on tour sometime next year. In a surprising move, 5th Season, the company behind the hit Apple TV Plus show Severance, now has a Blu-ray available for pre-order on Amazon. It's not the first time an Apple TV Plus show has made its way to Blu-ray, but it's also not the most common move, and none of these actually come from Apple itself. See, despite Apple being on the side of Blu-ray during the format wars of 2006, Steve Jobs famously hated the licensing fees they had to pay to Sony to actually use the Blu-ray technology. That's why in the late 2000s you saw Macs that still had a DVD drive, but now my MacBook no longer has an optical drive. OS X never had Blu-ray support, and to this day, macOS still can't natively read Blu-ray discs. Steve Jobs was thinking ahead to the streaming age right up until he died off back in 2011, but I don't think he foresaw the pushback within the broader culture. People demand physical media, and the irony is not lost on me that production companies have to go around Apple, of all things, to meet that demand. Hell, there are small towns less than an hour's drive from this studio in Duluth who still have spotty enough internet access that they prefer DVDs and Blu-rays. And there's savvy film nerds like me who know that when you stream a movie on Apple TV Plus, or you buy a movie on iTunes, you don't actually own the movie. You own a license to see that movie. Steam just had to blast a pop-up to its users explaining this for its video games. Companies like Apple and Amazon are going to keep trying to squeeze whatever they can out of your subscription. Don't believe me? Amazon just filed a motion to dismiss the class action lawsuit that's trying to ding it for charging extra for its ad-free tier. In its 19-page court filing on Friday, Amazon claims it never promised that its streaming service would always be ad-free. Which is a load of crap if you ask me, since internally Amazon Prime was never intended to be a profitable venture. It's the loss leader to get people's feet in the door and buy its products. Meanwhile, Paramount pulled all 10 of the original Star Trek movies, so now the only ones you can see on Paramount Plus are the ones from J.J. Abrams' Kelvin timeline. And Chris Pine is the best Chris, but come on! This is a lot of words to say. If you actually want to own your media, the most surefire way is to buy a physical copy, rip that disc to a hard drive, and back it up to new hard drives every 3 to 5 years. There's no subscription fees and no ads because you actually bought it and now you do own a copy. Shifting gears a bit, fans of the manga artist Junji Ito have been hyped for so many years to finally see a good adaptation of his work. There were 33 bad Ito adaptations up to this point, and fans have been pissed because the work itself offers a lot to love. So in comes Adult Swim, who played up the idea that Uzumaki would at last be a top quality adaptation. But between a drawn out development process, a small crew, and COVID production delays, the anime gained a reputation as another cursed production. So imagine fans' joy when the first of the 4-episode miniseries finally aired and it looked really good. I mean, I have my own bones to pick with the first episode, but it's fine, fans loved it. But they did not love the second episode. Now, the animation really isn't a disaster like people make it out to be. Anime fans have accepted way worse from other shows. And mercifully, episode 3 just came out and it looks pretty fine. Ultimately, the problem here isn't that the animation quality is bad. It's that people came to the table with unfairly high expectations, and that part very much is on Adult Swim. In a thread on Blue Sky, Toonami co-creator and Uzumaki executive producer Jason DeMarco shared some thoughts. Before he deleted everything, he said the team had a hard choice. Either don't finish and call it a loss, leave everything incomplete at just episode 1, or air everything as is. DeMarco wouldn't name names, and considering the visceral reaction from fans, I don't blame him. But it sounds like there is a singular person at Adult Swim who's responsible for the scheduling problems and therefore for the dip in production quality. But who it is a mystery, and they're probably safer not stepping forward. DeMarco has a nice job, and it would end his career to out the person responsible. Ultimately, yeah, it's disappointing that this is yet another lackluster Junji Ito adaptation. But consider this, the first episode wraps up well enough that you could watch that as a short film. Is it as satisfying as getting the full manga adaptation? Of course not, and I won't pretend that it is. But it's at least something, and maybe reframing the experience can help. Let's get off this sour topic and do the numbers. Terrifier 3 riled up the box office this weekend, landing at number 1, followed by The Wild Robot at number 2, Joker Folie à Deux at number 3, and Beetlejuice at number 4. Down the list, we saw the My Hero Academia movie premiere at number 8, Transformers 1 slide down to number 6, and The Nightmare Before Christmas pop in for a re-release at number 9. Also, Deadpool and Wolverine finally dropped off the charts. Universal got a nice little boost as Wicked pre-sales hit the second highest of the year behind Deadpool and Wolverine. Fandango won't give actual numbers yet, but Deadpool and Wolverine previously made $96 million on its first day of pre-sales. Considering that and the fact that Wicked will need about $300 million to break even, it's possible this movie will be a success before a single frame hits theater screens. Looking at the streaming charts, It's What's Inside debuted on the Movies chart at number 2, Salem's Lot debuted at number 5, and the original Beetlejuice slid down to number 6. In series, From regains the top spot, The Penguin holds steady at number 4, Agatha All Along drops down to number 6, and for some reason, Yellow Jackets rocketed up to number 7. In quick news, Chaos has been canceled on Netflix along with Velma on Max. My Hero Academia will air its final season next year, and DreamWorks is developing a sequel to The Wild Robot. Variety did an interview with Jennifer Salke, the head of Amazon Studios, where we gleaned a few updates on the Rings of Power. Namely, 1. Amazon is excited that it acquired Brace Studios, where they shot season 2, and they're committed to keeping the show in the UK. 2. Over 55 million people watched the show since season 2 began. 3. They're going to stick to the 5 seasons they have planned. And 4. Amazon wants to acquire Embracer, the company that owns most of the rights to Tolkien's work, but Amazon doesn't have any plans they're ready to talk about because they're probably not ready to act yet. In an interview with comicbook.com, Rick Riordan shared a production update on the Percy Jackson show.
I'd say we're probably coming up on like the 1/3 mark, maybe. That's just my opinion. That's not official from Disney or anything. But I can say we're on schedule and things are moving right along. And people are just working like you wouldn't believe.
Ncuti Gatwa shared with the Radio Times that Bad Wolf won't start filming the next season of Doctor Who until next year. In an interview with Collider, Genndy Tartakovsky talked about Primal and shared that they're just finishing up animation on the 10th episode of season 3 out of 20 planned episodes, and that they're into post-production on a couple episodes now. He also says it's safe to say we'll get season 3 in 2025. Japanese publisher T.O. Books announced that the light novel A Gentle Noble's Vacation Recommendation will get an anime adaptation. It's a story about a man who finds himself in a city that looks a lot like his own, but clearly isn't. And then he figures out that it's a totally different world. So he does the totally normal thing and decides to learn more about this new world, and promptly dives into side quests like joining an adventuring guild. Meanwhile, French studio Gaumont has greenlit a new animated series adaptation of The Jungle Book. Henry Cavill will star in Amazon's live-action Voltron series. Deadline reports that English filmmaker John Boorman is developing his own story, The Honey Wars, to a feature-length animated film with Cavalier Productions out of Dublin. And he's got a bunch of high-profile actors waiting in the wings. Jamie Lee Curtis, Vanessa Kirby, Patrick Stewart, Brendan Gleeson, Richard E. Grant, and Jon Voight are all in talks to act in this film. Cavalier bills it as a dark comedic fantasy that follows a girl after the death of her mom uprooted her life, and she stumbles into a tense war between fairies and elves. Boorman has a decades-long career spanning all the way back to 1962. Over the decades, he's been nominated for 5 Oscars and 3 BAFTAs. He's also the guy who brought us Deliverance. So when the head of Cavalier Productions says this film combines the scope of Lord of the Rings with the quirkiness of Coraline, I'm inclined to believe them. AMC has begun production in the UK on the Talamasca, the next Anne Rice series. And Harry Potter is in the news again because the head writer of the TV adaptation isn't doing the minimum level of work for his job. But we're not going to cover that because J.K. Rowling hates trans people, she uses her billionaire wealth to fund anti-trans hate groups, and she uses people's enjoyment of Harry Potter as silent approval for her hate. The best thing we can do is let Harry Potter fade into obscurity, only to be rediscovered after Joanne has died and her money has dried up. The best thing she can do is touch grass and reconnect with her family. Let's give this TV adaptation all the attention it deserves. 0. Moving on to other rich people being terrible, Millennium Pictures hasn't been paying its writers to the point that the WGA West has issued a do not work order on the company. In better news, the Canadian company Green Ghost Media and French studio Tic Tac Productions have teamed up to adapt Wolf Night, the French young adult fantasy series. Finally, Robert Eggers talked with Total Film about Nosferatu, and particularly about Bill Skarsgård's performance as Count Orlok. In the final issue of Total Film, Eggers shared they went the total opposite direction of Edward Cullen, from pretty and sparkling to scary and smelly. And I shouldn't be surprised about this, but I guess Robert Eggers is an edgelord? Coming up this week on Monday, it's the return of Ari Ferretta from Commonplace to World's Strongest. Then Rumors lands in theaters on Thursday, and Beyond the North Woods hits Tubi on Friday. On Saturday, it's the premiere of Blue Miburo, an anime historical drama about an elite group of samurai. Lastly, I'm bummed I won't be able to make it to FilmQuest this year, because they have a banger lineup of fantasy films. If you can make it out to Provo, definitely check it out. But that's all we got for you this week in fantasy movies. What new shows are you excited for? Let us know in the comments and we'll keep an eye on them, because with your help, we'll have more in fantasy movies next week.